Hello everyone and welcome to the next episode of Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. During the last stream we finished by sinking down deep into the slumber, and now we are resting. This is the map of New York, on which we'll have some options in the future, as I've seen it in the previous builds. But as for now, the only option for us is to rest, and that's what I'm going to do. Hunger lies at the heart of vampire's existence. To ignore it is to tempt the beast to take over your actions and in its desire to feed. To overindulge in feeding may threaten the masquerade as well as staining what humanity you have left. In Coteries of New York, having high hunger is indicated by a progressively bigger bloody frame around the screen, like the one you see now. Alright, so this thing around me, good to know. As your hunger grows, so does this indicator. Your hunger may increase when you call upon your vampiric powers, or when you need to mend your wounds after a fight. When your hunger reaches the maximum amount, you'll receive a warning after you complete a piece of the story. Ignore it at your own peril. Some choices might only become visible if your hunger is high enough. Similarly, a high hunger may block off some choices, as you will be able to see after pressing continue. Blocked of option, I see. Alright, so, I mean, I do feel like the high hunger playthrough would be kind of similar to low humanity playthrough, so I guess it's an interesting option that we might consider to play with our Toreator, but maybe I should leave it for my Bruja playthrough, we'll see. To decrease hunger, you will need to feed. Whenever you see a feeding opportunity, you can take the risk to hunt and slake your hunger. Feeding opportunity. You will need to keep the hunger at bay if you are to uphold the masquerade and survive the nights that await you. Well, we are a vampire. That's what we do, we feed. You open your eyes. The bed isn't warm. Worst feeling. The room is filled with artificial light from the ceiling. The solid metal door is closed. Speaking of which, I just had a thought. A little flashback from my childhood. As much as having a warm bed is a beautiful thing, I remember I really liked to always have a cold pillow, and when I couldn't sleep, I was just rotating my pillow around just to find the coldest spot on it and sleep on it. Question, am I the vampire or is this normal? I want to find people who feel the same. Anyway, the room is filled with artificial light from the ceiling. The solid metal door is closed. Normally you'd stretch for a bit. On some mornings you'd probably throw the quilt over yourself and snooze a moment longer. But that was before. The way you woke up now, you are fully conscious, no grogginess. Nothing weighing you down, just a nagging need in the back of your head. That's very important because I mean, up until you are a vampire, you don't really realize how little time vampires have. There are some places on this earth which are kind of dark, of course, and where the darkness during some time of the year lasts for pretty long. But in most places of the earth, the night is not that long. The time of absolute darkness is quite short, and you only have this much time to find yourself your prey, to feed, and to do your errands, which is a lot for a vampire. So definitely there is some impatience to being a vampire. Hunger, not as severe as the last time, but unmistakably there. You get up and open the door to the main room. A digital clock on the TV shows you the time, 9:04. You walk over to the blinds and retract them cautiously. The only light coming in is New York City's artificial nighttime luminescence. So that's what your waking hours are going to look like now. You missed the sunlight already. You're seriously considering just walking out of the apartment and figuring this all out by yourself. But then you come back to the memory of Coteries' exotic sword being raised in the gallery. Maybe sticking around isn't that bad of an idea after all. You keep jumping channels for around half an hour and then switch to streaming services. Almost as if the universe had sense of the irony, you catch True Blood in the flood of recommendations. The doorbell rings. Is there True Blood on streaming services? Which ones? Because I don't have it on Netflix. It's Sophie. Good evening, Lafayette. Slept well? Like a dead man? Curious wording, but not that far from the truth, I suppose. No use on dwelling on it. I think you will agree with time. You made the right choice yesterday. I can teach you many things about yourself, your blood, its desires and its power. We will begin tonight. You are hungry, yes? I'm sure you are. Our kind always is. There is only one remedy, the blood. The drinks we had yesterday at Elysium are not the usual way you slake your thirst. So tonight I will assist you in your first foray into hunting. You need to learn to sense the kind of blood you desire, to understand how you can use the kind's vulnerabilities to your advantage. The kind of blood you desire, it's a very interesting concept, which is introduced anew in Vampire the Masquerade V5. A concept of resonance, the blood that has the taste, depending on whether the human is choleric, for example, or sanguine, sexual, or melancholic, sad, or maybe phlegmatic, calm, and stoic. The blood tastes differently and may have different effect on you. This is also something that will be explored in Bloodlines 2, so it's a very useful mechanic to remember about. No more freebies. No more drinks on the house. An official meeting in the Elysium does not happen every night. Besides, I think you'll find there's a unique thrill to hunting for fresh, hot blood that is absent when drinking it from a glass. You will find that drinking moderate amounts of it regularly will keep the hunger and the whispers of the beast away. You might think yourself monstrous, but there is a balance to be found here. The kiss gives the kind pleasure. You might remember this from your own embrace. Some can even become addicted to the sensation, but if you do it right, they tend to misremember your feeling. If you do it right, so if you don't use a lingering kiss on poor humans, then yeah, then they don't get addicted usually. But lingering kiss, which is the ability of Clantoriator, so Sophie maybe possesses it actually, is something that addicts human from the bite. And I want to actually read about the kiss. An act of drinking blood, usually from a mortal. The kiss causes feelings of ecstasy in those who receive it. And the embrace is the act of transforming a mortal into a vampire. The embrace requires the vampire to drain her victim and then replace that victim's blood with a bit of her own. Okay. After all, vampires do not exist. They are myths, fairy tales, and pop culture mainstays. Correct. She gives you a sly, knowing smile. That is why the masquerade is so important, and even more crucial when you feed. How do I choose who to feed from? Are there better or worse targets? Isolated kind are easiest prey, of course, but much depends on context. Hunting requires a different approach in a busy club than it does in an empty street. With time, you will have the luxury of finding your preference in hunting methods and prey. For now, I suggest experimenting in moderation. So when it comes to hunting methods, that's also something that is new in V5. It's the predator system. So each vampire has their own predator type that they develop, of course, at first, but then they stick to it, usually. And there are predator types such as Sandman, for example, preferring to feed on sleeping victims, Alley Cat, who prefers to snatch humans in the dark alleys and drink them and run. Then you also have Cleaver, for example, who drinks from their own family. Or maybe Consensualist, a vampire who only drinks from those humans who give them explicit consent. There are a lot of more or less problematic types of feeders, of predators, but I probably should make a separate video about that one day. Feeding from the same area repeatedly can be dangerous, but by branching out you risk the ire of other kindred on whose domain you trespass. Lucky for you, New York City is more forgiving in this regard. Domain. The area of particular vampires' influence. Princes claim entire cities as their domains, sometimes allowing lesser vampires to claim domain within. That's what happened in Seattle, actually. Prince Cross, who is going to be a prince in Bloodlines 2, allowed other vampires to take domain inside Seattle. So there are other factions which have parts of the domain as well. New York is in somewhat of a unique position. Many of its neighborhoods remain contested or unclaimed. The reason for this is a lesson for another time, but keep the following in mind. Take opportunities to feed when they present themselves these upcoming nights. As long as you hunt cautiously and respect the masquerade, at all times you should be fine. To wit, I want you to join me for a trip tonight. Come downstairs, Gregory is waiting for us. The busy street fills the air with traffic noise, pedestrian chatter and a mix of smells that disorient you momentarily. These warm bodies contain what you want, what you need. You catch yourself. Did you really just think of these people as mere sources of blood? It takes a nudge from Sophie to break your train of thought. Her driver opened the door for her and then tips his hat to you, gesturing to the back of the car. The car casually joins the somewhat thinned New York traffic. It's still busy in a way only one of the biggest cities in the world can be, but compared to the daytime commute, it's a pleasant drive. You barely have the time to gather your thoughts and formulate new questions before the car comes to a stop. You're among the tall skyscrapers that make up Manhattan's iconic skyline. You feel a pang of emotion as you realize this is where you took part in an exhibition just 2 nights prior. Same address and you suspect same hall. To what ends has it been repurposed tonight? Come, Lafayette, park the car, Gregory, will you? The driver just nods and Sophie gets out. You join her and the two of you walk through the glass door together, then take the elevator up. You first notice an empty stage with the instruments of a string quartet still in the back, then take in the few dozen chairs in front of it. The concert seeming concluded, the patrons, all smartly dressed and posh, have spread out all over the hall. Sophie strides confidently inside, produces an invitation from her purse that she flashes in front of a security guard. You follow close and are let through without issue. Now let's start easy. A social setting like this one would usually prove quite challenging to an inexperienced kindred, but consider this evening a small gift from your patron. I'm hoping to procure for you a willing vessel. Just remember what I told you about taking small sips. This one I have a soft spot for. Don't damage her. Now let's see here. Ah, there he is. She notices somebody in the crowd, flashes a heart-melting smile, and suddenly even you feel drawn to her. You haven't thought about it before, but it's laid clear before you in this moment. Sophie is beautiful. Just looking at her is privilege. Just being with her makes you feel elated. Everybody in the crowd, but especially the man who's almost tripping over himself to reach her, clearly agrees. She's using awe, the very first level ability of Toreador, which is kind of OP in the system. Edgar, I'm so happy to see you. How is your daughter? Is she with you? Oh, there she is, Julie, my girl. Come over, please. There's somebody I'd like to meet. The young woman who walks across the hall can't be more than 19 years old. It's clear from her mismatched earrings and the partially faded purple hair dye that she doesn't fit this crowd. Julie, this is Lafayette. I think the two of you should get acquainted while I talk business with your dad. Awfully boring stuff, I assure you. I'm positive you'll like each other. The girl gives you a shy smile and nods towards the balcony stairs. You follow, somewhat unsure what it is exactly Sophie expects you to do. You reach a secluded space from which the entire lobby is visible. All eyes are on Sophie. They listen intently, then laugh when she does. Julie saves you the trouble of figuring out the next step. If you're with Sophie, then I guess you're, I mean that you, you know... She puts her wrist to her lips and gives herself a theatrical nip. Then looks to you embarrassed, but also hopeful. What, are you into that sort of thing? She blushes, looks down at the floor, nods. Could you, I mean, if you'd like, Miss Langley tells me I am. She swallows hard, avoids your eyes. That I, taste nice. Drink from her. You take her forearm in your hands. A quick look around confirms nobody's watching, and no security cameras cover this area. You bite down, gently. It's surreal. She's just given you her blood for her own volition. How is this possible? What about the masquerade? You need to ask Sophie. Your thoughts disappear amid the bliss. They're just a taste, sweet, fresh, sanguine. You drink and drink and drink. No, stop, stop, stop! You tear away from the girl harder than you wanted. Still, the bite leaves just tiny punctures. Almost as if by instinct you lick them clean, and the two holes become concealed, just like that. Julie is now leaning on the wall, pale, wobbly on her feet, but happy? She lets out a dreamy sigh, opens her eyes. A few tears fall onto her shirt. Tears of joy. Thank you. Please, can you walk me downstairs, please? My dad, he doesn't know. Thinks it's a condition. Miss Langley told him so. She leans on you and requests you walk her over to a bench. She takes a seat and smiles at you. The crowd around Sophie disperses slowly. Looking at her now, only some residual awe hangs in the air. Yes, she's pretty, maybe even beautiful, sure, but not your type. What came over you before? You walk over to her. Edgar, dear, it was splendid talking to you, but we need to get going. Give Julie my best wishes. Come with, Lafayette. Gregory is waiting for you out front. It's only in the car that Sophie addresses you. I can tell from your look that you took the opportunity. Good for you. That girl's exquisite, don't you think? You wouldn't tell by her demeanor, but she has so much passion. It brings out a unique bouquet in her blood. I think she knows who we are. That's not normal, right? It's not usual, that much is true, but don't worry. She'll do anything I tell her to. I won't say anything to anyone that I haven't put in her pretty head first. Time for the next stop. Training wheels off this time, Gregory. Flushing Meadows, please. The driver takes the car over to the Williamsburg Bridge. You settle your thoughts. Those people back at the hall, they were all entranced. Even I was under your spell. What was that? She smiles with satisfaction. That old trick? Just the blood doing my bidding. We all have our talents. Some of them come from the legacy we inherit from our sire. Others can be learned with experience. Sophie did play plenty of RPGs in her life. I can sway people or make them fear me. That's don't. It's interesting because in the new system, on each level, most of the levels, not all of them, but on each level of the discipline, you have two abilities to pick from, and you can also pick both of them. And for example, on level 4 of presence, only have the powers of 1, 2, 3, because you took 2 powers from the level 1. And the level 1 of presence, the Toreador's and Ventrus and Brujas ability to attract people around them or actually cause some feelings to people around them, allows you to either awe the audience or daunt them. So you can also push them away, which is also pretty useful in some circumstances. I can see more of the world and in greater detail than some kindreds. That's all specs. I can will my body to move with unparalleled precision and grace. That's celerity, and more. So she's clearly a typical Toreador for you, but she also says and more. Now this doesn't suggest anymore that she has to be a Diablerist, because in the new system it is easy to buy the abilities from different disciplines, non-clan disciplines with experience. It costs you more, but you can still do that. It's only with Blood Magic and I believe Oblivion, the La Sombras discipline, that you need to have a teacher of some sorts. And for Blood Magic you also need some kind of a teacher. You can't just learn it out of the blue. And also Finnblood Alchemy, I think, is reserved for Finnbloods only. But the rest of them, you can learn. All of these skills make me who I am. They also help me hunt. What are my powers? Time will tell. You need to discover them yourself. When we arrive, experiment. Give different things a try. Follow your instinct and intuition. It will guide the blood. Always keep the masquerade in mind, however. It is all fine if you can disappear in plain sight or command animals with your mind, but save those over talents for the right place and time. She's talking about animalism and obfuscate. It only takes you half an hour to reach the park at this time of night. Both you and Sophie leave the car, with Gregory left behind again to find a parking spot and keep an eye on the car. It's a beautiful background. Sophie seems deep in thought. She takes in the surroundings with a dreamy gaze. The sky is surprisingly clear tonight. The stars just barely visible in the light-polluted aura of the city. I feel like having a snack myself. I'll be by the fountain. Go look for somebody to your liking. See what effects you can achieve with your blood. But only pick one victim. Just one. Then come back. Seeing how she seems not altogether right now, we decide to leave Sophie to her own devices and seek out your prey. From here it looks like you have a few choices. Just taking a stroll around the park and finding an isolated jogger or someone like them could work, but focusing on one area might work better. The New York State Pavilion might work as a secluded spot. There's a skate park nearby. In the worst case scenario, there's bound to be some unfortunate wino around. Or maybe the tennis courts nearby. There's light coming from there, so somebody might still be playing a late night match. They won't be alone, but they might be tired and let their guard down. As the scenarios play out in your mind, you realize you're planning how to assault a stranger in the middle of a night. It's a good thing to realize, you know. A lot of people have this thing, especially in their role-playing, where they switch their mind to, oh, I'm a vampire now, killing humans, getting blood. But you would have objections, moral objections, if you are putting straight from your humanity towards your unlife. You wouldn't really feel so comfortable with all these things, even if you are a huge vampire fan, even if you read all the vampire fiction in the world. It's different to read or watch movies or whatever about that, and it's different to experience it on your own skin. I know what I'm saying. It's a weird way to be, but the now familiar hunger prompts you to act. Okay. I'm not going to go over the tennis courts because there's always going to be two victims there. Search for a victim around the park, hunt near the decrepit pavilion. I think this is great. You make your way to one of the park's most well-known landmarks, the round skeleton of the New York State Pavilion, with its two vaguely futuristic-looking towers. You don't get lucky with the skate park. It's not deserted. Instead, a group of skaters is gathering there, talking loudly and listening to music playing out of crackling smartphone speakers. Deciding to have a quick look around, you identify a potential victim, a sleeping bag lady, leaned back on the bench, a shopping cart full of what looks like trash nearby. Not the tasty kind of blood. Even thinking of that second option makes you feel sick. You decide to take your chances with the skaters, not even getting close to the homeless woman. That's my tolerator. You think back to what Sophie did in the hall, how she managed to focus the attention of the entire gathering on her. That might be a tall order for you, but a single person could be doable. You single out the guy who's talking on his phone away from gathering. He's having a heated discussion with somebody. A relative? A partner? It's not going well. This talk's over. I said shut the fuck up. Hey, you hearing me? Shut up. Call me when you get some fucking sense into your stupid brain, okay? He ends the call abruptly and almost throws the phone to the ground in frustration. Rough night? He's got an angry expression on his face and tears welling in his eyes, but he gives a curious look and even a bit of a shy smile. And yeah, you could say that. What's up? I want to show you something. He takes a few steps forward, away from his buddies, who remain totally oblivious to what's happening. But you see your influence fading. You take your chance and lunge. Your fangs sink into his exposed shoulder. He shivers and lets out a moan. His phone hits the pavement and you hear the casing crack. His blood tastes like a clash of hot emotion and melancholy, laced with some artificial stimulant you can't quite place. An energy drink? A recreational drug? It's a strange mix. You hardly have a chance to savor it, as the proximity of the skater's friends makes you feel vulnerable. You hastily finish drinking and drag the guy over to the pavilion. When you turn around, you realize you're not alone. A hooded man is looking menacingly at you. What do you think you're doing, barging in on my turf like this? Lick. Oopsie! Lick, a derogatory term usually used to address young, unexperienced vampires. I love beer. That's a cool little hat, and he also has a jacket which says Mike. Didn't mean to trespass, I'm gone. too late for that, friendo. You want to live here in one piece. You talk candidly. I know what you are, so you can shove that masquerade misdirection up your ass. No, better tell me who you're with before my pose shows up and we beat it out of you. Shit, he doesn't look Camarilla. I'm with the Camarilla? He does anything but chill out. He merely tenses up, gives you an extremely nasty look and bares his fangs. You the Ivory Tower, Conta? Well, tonight's my lucky night. Oh, Jesus. Ivory Tower is another name for the Camarilla. Alright. I'ma fuck you up and bring you to Calican. You'll have some fun breaking your shins, and maybe by the end of it, I'll get to have a nice long sip. I wonder what you taste like, lick. He does his best impression of Hannibal Lecter's and a nice Chianti stick, but it's not as intimidating as he thinks. Celerity. I would do that, but celerity is breaking the masquerade. Call for help. Help! Anyone! The guy reacts immediately, charging and pushing you to the ground. He goes for a bite. You don't let him reach you. He's fast but pretty weak. The brawl takes a bit out of both of you. Suddenly you hear heavy footsteps closing in, and the fuck is snatched from over you. He hits a tree, hard. Before he can recover, a sharp piece of wood pierces his chest. It's Gregory, Sophie's driver, who deals the blow. Hey, that's a ghoul, right? He's a ghoul, I don't even know. The hoodlum is rendered inert. His eyes remain open, but he does not move and does not protest when Gregory puts him over his shoulder. Miss Langley is waiting for us. Come before your snack wakes up. Snack? Am I going to drink a vampire? He points to your victim, who is just coming to and gives you a somewhat snarky smile, then breaks into a swift walk towards the Unispur. Oh, I see. How did you get here so fast? I was watching you from afar. Miss Langley asked me to look out for you. She suspected you'd get into trouble. He seems to realize he might have said too much and just keeps walking, somewhat embarrassed. You reach the Unispur together, with the hoodlum in tow. Two figures are visible near the sculpture, a man and a woman, tangled in a passionate embrace. No, not exactly. It's Sophie, fitting. But this whole scene is set up so that it looks like a pair getting intimate in public. She pulls it off like she's done it 100 times before. It occurs to you that she probably has. The man is unsure on his feet as she lets go of him and leads him towards a nearby bench. Noticing you, she whispers something into his ear and leaves him. She nods to Gregory as you approach. And what do we have here? Did this kindred give you trouble, Lafayette? He mentioned the Callahan? Is it something about presenting me to somebody named Callahan? Ever heard of him? She looks shocked for a split second, then recovers her regular countenance. Yes, I have. This hoodlum is anarch then. Curious. Corona Park has not been claimed by any kindred last I checked. The Anarch movement, a vampire sect that opposes the tyranny of elders and has placed itself outside the secret society of the Camarilla. Let's go to the car. We'll put him in the trunk and present him to Kadir tomorrow night. I'm sure he'll be delighted to make this unbound's acquaintance. Gregory carries the staked vampire and dumps him in the car's trunk like a mannequin. It's a strange sight, and you're quite happy you're not in that poor fucker's shoes right now. It's almost surprising that you can get away with just casually throwing a stiff into your car and driving away, but then you remember that Sophie has been doing this far longer than you have. Still, the nagging thought that anything you did tonight could have been recorded on a CCTV camera or picked up by a rando with a half-decent smartphone and streamed online fills you with dread. Hunting and using your abilities is a dangerous business. It's clear that this whole being a vampire thing has about as many caveats as it has perks. Well, the last Vampire the Masquerade game happened in 2004, Bloodlines 1, and it still had Smiling Jack telling us that we live in the age of cell phone cameras. It only got worse since then, so we have to be aware of the fact that it is It has to be quite difficult to be a vampire these days, and probably that's also why there is a rise of the Second Inquisition nowadays. You're taken out of your headspace by Sophie's voice. I will pick you up tomorrow's night, same as tonight. I have some business to attend to at Elysium, and I expect you to accompany me. Plus, our friend in the back needs to be properly introduced to Kadir and the prince. I'm sure he'll have something interesting to say in the cards. Her voice is cold, cruel, and nothing like the enchanting personality she showed at the gallery earlier tonight. Sophie's clearly a woman of many faces. What's going to happen to him? The usual, I imagine. Interrogation by Kadir, probably in the basement of the gallery. A quick trial with the prince in attendance if she's there tomorrow night. A swift execution as the verdict. This all sounds eerily familiar to you, and you can't help but feel a pang of guilt when you think about what awaits this guy tomorrow night. You haven't told me how your hunting went. Getting the hang of it, I would hope. I'll need time to get used to this. It doesn't come naturally. It will, with time. You need to think about it less. Hunting is the one scenario in which you'll do well to trust your instincts. In moderation, of course. She seems distracted, not all there. Her thoughts drift and the car remains silent until you reach your apartment. We'll pick you up tomorrow evening. Good night. Just like that, without any further courtesy, Sophie leaves, driven to her apartment by Gregory with a body in the trunk, right in the middle of Manhattan. Did you cross paths with situations like this in the past unknowingly? What other secrets did you pass on the streets without knowing their true nature? Your haven is just as you left it hours ago. Although the sun won't come up for some time, you feel tired. You learned something about yourself today, and it will take time to process. The court is a social system of cities kindred, resembling the feudal system of mortals. At the top is the prince, below them the members of the Primogen Council, so each clan has their Primogen. Order in the domain is maintained by the sheriff. The gatherings are organized in secret sanctuaries known as Elysiums. There are also other Camarilla functions out there, like Justicars, Archons, Harpies, but it's a very long topic to talk about. And Haven is the vampire's home or base, where they find sanctuary from the sun. You're not in the mood for the television, and the few books you have on the shelves in the apartment are either in languages you don't speak or sound like a boring read. Nothing left to do but rest. You settle in the back room, lock the door, a moment of hesitation, but then a decision. This time, you turn the lights off. You think back to Julie. How many people in the city know about this vampiric society? How many are willing accomplices in sustaining it? And the fight you met in the park, if he's not Camarilla, then what is he? Are there independent vampires? How does that work? More questions. You begin wondering if there's ever going to be a night when you can start crossing them off the list, instead of adding it. You close your eyes. You sink into the now familiar void of nothingness. That will be all for today, guys. Shorter one, because this day wasn't that long, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. The day, I used the word day, didn't I? It's a night, of course, and you shouldn't get lost in it, by the way. Thank you so much, and let's see you in another episode.